So the title of my thesis is going to be Unpredictability, and I tried to provide you within the next 30 minutes or so with some insights about unpredictability, but also with some tools and also some recommendations about unpredictability, so that you are able to to deal in the right way, properly and efficiently with unpredictability. This is my thesis. Unpredictability is becoming an ever more important factor for any brand. Those brands who know how to make full use of it will be the ones most successful. So I start with this as a focus on the brands and on the companies, but during I was doing this school, I was thinking also about the creative leadership part of it, because unpredictability is a big part also of the educational system, and something which I think should also have a part of the education, and that's why I also build in a part of creative leadership. What struck me most about this topic, and it's a little bit haunting me, and maybe this was the reason why I got a little bit emotional when we had Professor Tabatoni speaking. He was saying that growth should be an objective of a company, and I was just challenging that. I'm not sure if growth should be an objective. Of course, you have to be profitable, you have to have a vision, but I'm not sure if this has to be in line with growth. And because the problem is, as bigger as agencies get or startups get, the problem starts. They become predictable, processes become standardized, and this is really the problem. They lose the edge of a startup company. The startup company is usually very flexible, very competitive, and they're losing those edges, especially when the bean counters come in and the cost optimization is part of it. So what's the relevance also about the creative leadership of this part? And for this sense, I made make a little life experiment. So, see, this is exactly the problem with unpredictability. Life is not linear, and neither is business, and neither are processes in decision making. So when I dived into this topic, I had the possibility to interview a professor of work on the organizational psychology. It's this man, Professor Theo Wedner, and he confirmed that today it is no longer a question of managing the expected, but rather of managing the unexpected. He thinks this will take a completely new set of skills for manager, that because the time to decision, which is the topic right here, is becoming pretty low. And there's a quite delicate film document where you see somebody struggling with the time to decision, and the challenges a manager is faced with in today's, and it's the moment where George W. Bush got informed by his chief of staff that the second plane hit the tower. So this is the document. Boys and girls, sound this word out. Get ready. What word? Steal. Yes, steal. Read these words the fast way. Get ready. Play. Yes, play. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. Let's read these words the fast way without making a mistake. Get ready. Kite. Yes, kite. Get ready. Kick. Yes, kick. Get ready. Steal. Yes, steal. Get ready. Yes, playing. Get ready. Must. Yes, must. What do you say? Open your book up to the left. And now there comes the moment where he is informed. 60 on page 153. Two intriguing things here. One, I'm not sure if I was hearing it right, but I think that the kid said plane. In the moment he got informed, I think it was quite, trashing me, I have to say. And the second thing is, after he got this information, he was sitting there for another 5 to 7 minutes listening to the kids. So he was really struggling. There were some commissions afterwards, trying to get out why this was. And he said, I don't wanted to show a country, a president in panic. So I'm not sure if this is right, but I think this is the challenge we have today. Today we have the time which we have to take to good decisions is shrinking. And I found this study from Teradata, which is a database management, the global one, and they asked 1,200 managers if they can confirm that the time they have to make decisions is shrinking, and 70% said yes. 50% of those managers surveyed even said that the decision making is even more complex, so they have they have less time to take more complex decisions. So I think we are living in times of real-time management. As the web evolved from the websites, from the slow web so-called, to the blogs and the social media, I think also that we have the real-time web, and we also have the real-time management. It's not only about the competitive environment you're living in, it's the emergence of blogs and social media that accelerated the exchange of information. The opinions on organizations and services are made within the space of just a few moments. Also, we were talking about rumors, and I think these facts are presenting company directors with a whole new set of challenges. So first I dived into my analysis, and I tried to find out if routine is really a bad thing. And I made a poll amongst 74 people, professionals between 25 and 45, and I asked them if they take every time exactly the same route to work, or if they randomly just change it. And 70% agreed they take exactly the same route to work every day. Now, behind this finding is something called habit. This is maybe not scientifically speaking not very groundbreaking, but behind the habit is a phenomenon called habituation. And we have somebody who overcame habituation was Mariano Rivera. He was famous for his cutter. He is the pitcher of the New York Yankees, and he was famous for his cutter. But over the time, people started to screen him, and they found out how they can maybe detect his weakness, and he started to develop a new throwing technique. So in the final in 2000, when he got on the pitch, he had like 2 new throws just to throw there, and he led his team to success. So, talking about habituation, the habituation ignores impulses that do not contain any information useful at a particular time, and the actual purpose of habituation is to prevent people becoming overloaded with impulses. This may be the ticking of a clock, or this could be the rushing of waves, for instance. You could do it deliberately. If you don't do it, your brain will do it for you. And the Washington Post in 2007 made a very interesting test on that, an experiment on perception and priorities. They asked a violinist player, Joshua Bell, a world-class violinist player, to play during the rush hour in the morning for 40 minutes at a metro station. This is what happened. So basically not a lot happened because your priorities is completely different. Now, marketeers and also scientists, they find out that if you want to bring out somebody of the habituation, you have to offend his consciousness. You have to find a way to differentiate what you are thinking. And they call it the brain theory. The brain theory prescribes that only things that stand out as being different become part of our subjective reality. And we already had some very successful disruptions. For instance, the iPhone was a disruption to the market. It defined the telephone market completely new. Also, the Google cache came in a situation or in a moment where the data explosion was massive, where we were surrounded by the data jungle, and they came with a very simple cache. Or also Burton, they changed their logo several times a year. So, but there's not only a benefit to the marketeers and to the scientists about overcome the habituation. There's also a benefit for the individual itself, because variety is the key to happiness. What we found out is that that when you're doing something new, when you do overcome a challenge, when you, for instance, doing a marathon, when you sing out aloud in your car, then your body releases a transmitter called dopamine. It's your own opiate, if you like, which comes out. So there's also, when you overcome something, and if you take on to a challenge, there's also something really good to you. I read a book about that, and basically the message was, if you don't have variety in your life, if you don't overcome your routines, if you don't have challenges, you rather would pauperize, or even maybe your brain would die. So this man, he put it into a very nice sentence, Johnny Shaw. He said he thinks that people don't need change, people are change. So I think we just genetically are driven to go into changes. So what's in it about the creative leadership? When I was doing my work, when I did my expert interviews, I basically came out with like three forces that drive a brand. I called it the predictability, and these three forces are driving a brand. It's the overall unpredictability, the overall context, it's the competitive environment, and it's the organization. The overall context is concerning economical and ecological global issues. It's the competitive environment is basically Michael Porter's 5 forces, and in organizations you rather have you have like the dynamics you have internally. Now, the overall context is I called it a reactive force, because there's nothing you can do about it, about that. The second one, the competitive environment, I called it a dual force, because there's something you can do about it with your offensive strategy, but you also, when you're putting on a defensive strategy, then it's rather reactive force. And the organizational force, I called it also an active strategy, because there's a lot you can do about it. So because this class loves tools, and especially Ricky, I tried to find out some tools how you can measure unpredictability. The first one is from a book, Predictable Surprises. It's a book written by Max Bazerman and Michael Watkins. They developed the recognition, prioritization, and the mobilization model. How you can, if there's an emerging threat or problem, you can look where you are and what you can do about it. They basically pretend in their book that the 9/11, but also the fall of Enron was a predictable surprise. So the shock waves were already there, but nobody recognized it. The second one is a framework developed by Robert Grant. It's a framework for predictable behavior, and it's basically like 4 questions you can ask yourself about your competitor and come up with preconditions what your competitor will do and how you can react on those kind of things. So I think more interesting is the strategies how you can force luck. And I found out about 3 strategies how you can force luck. The first one is concept brands and mentality fields. There's an interesting book, it's called Concepting, written by Jan Reichenberg. He talks about that brands have to become concept brands, and they have to define a mentality field. So if you just put this chart together with the Maslow pyramid, if you're down here, you're talking about the hardware, and if you're up there, you're talking about the mindware, and a lot of brands are already up there. And if you're up there, you have to define a mentality field, or if you like, a genetic code. We already know some genetic code of brands. For instance, Apple stands for inspiration, Nike stands for hero building, and Pepsi stands for the next generation. So I think this is how simple it can be. And those brands, they always stick to their DNA. Within this DNA, they act really fresh, and they're always up to surprises. But I think you have to really define a genetic code before you start to think about logo sizes and colors. The next strategy is called the sperm strategy. This is basically to float several trial balloons instead of only one, just to spread the risk. And this is basically inspired by the financial sector. The hedge funds are exactly put together in this way. So this is something which is very useful. But I think the most interesting part is future memory. future memory is something that influences your implicit memory. Your implicit memory is the part of your body which says you yes, no, I like it, I don't like it, I like this person, I don't like this person, and this can be influenced because the future memory refers to the cognitive anticipation of possible future scenarios. It's about developing semantic networks that does not reflect reality but rather solicits the future. And if in the future new concepts, new products, or maybe new ideas emerge, those can be combined with existing knowledge and therefore are no longer rejected. So, if you read this, you would say, yeah, I mean, this is the description or the curriculum of one specific person. And you're absolutely right, it's David Palmer. It's the characterization of David Palmer from 2001. I just took it from Fox website. And I mean, if you see this, I mean, it's obviously, it looks like his curriculum. And you have to ask yourself if maybe David Palmer was already a product of future memory, or if there is something that, if 24 was already maybe a part of the propaganda of future memory, of Barack Obama election campaign. I talked to this guy, he's a specialist on future memory. He says Barack Obama is a product of future memory without a doubt. He said even there was an ABC series called Commander-in-Chief, which was pre-shadowing Hillary Clinton's bid for the presidency. So maybe both parts of the party, they came to the same idea that you can influence people's implicit knowledge. And I mean, just ask yourself, you're in this voting booth and you ask yourself, could a black man or an African American lead this country? You think of the series and think, yeah, I saw him succeeding all the time, so you put the cross on the right thing. So thanks to David, he said, I think the topic is good, but it would be very nice if maybe we could measure unpredictability. Is it possible to measure unpredictability? And that's why I developed the Unpredictability Index. This is written in WebThings typeface, I don't know what. So, when I was screening successful companies and had in my written thesis about 10 brands, it usually came down to 3 buzzwords. Usually you have like a successful company, they have like unpredictable actions. Their next marketing coup, their next product is hardly to predict, if not impossible. The second point is they always have unconventional actions to the market, but also unconventional actions within a company, within an organization, and usually they have a very deep impact on their environment. And when I looked at those words, I mean, this is the vocabulary of marketeers, of course, but it's exactly the vocabulary of terrorism. The definition of terrorism is unpredictable act of violence aimed at destabilizing those it attacks. It uses unconventional methods to disrupt the functioning of the system it attacks, and it intends to have the largest possible impact on those it attacks. And with these 3 buzzwords I started to do my research method. It was a quantitative study about keywords. I used Google as a coarse filter just to see which word belonged to which brand, and I took social mention, which is a search engine only for blogs and social media, which incorporates positive comments on this topic. So in Google you have everything which concerning impact, but Microsoft would also have everything concerning impact, of course. But in social mention you only have the positive comments, and I rated this higher than the Google filter. And I just typed in unpredictable with Apple computers, for instance, Apple Group, on conventional, I added them up, and I wanted to be sure if this was the right thing to do. So for the first time in my life, I was agreeing to a pretest. So I made a pretest on good to great companies from Jim Collins, and I wanted to know if the good to great companies, which are written here, have the higher unpredictability factor as the direct comparisons. And in every case, the company on the right had the higher factor than on the right one. So this was for me the sign I'm on the right track, and I started to do my unpredictability index, and this is it. So we have on first place, maybe not surprisingly, it's Google, and let's just call it, it's the criminal energy of brands. I think this is what you have to have. This is what shows your innovation value, what innovation value a company has. Burton on second place, Apple on third place. I just took the 10 companies I used in my thesis as good examples, where I could see that there were like some structures and some organizational design which are really up to. This is a nice list, but the most unpredictable brand is still not up here, and I'm so glad he's sitting right here amongst us. It's Sergio Godillo. He's on. You made it on 11th place with 6 hits on social mention, which is not bad, and 427 hits on. So, now we have all the tools, the measurements, and the strategies. In the end, I just wanted not to be very open. I wanted to be very concrete. What can you do about unpredictability? And is there a strategy for more unpredictability? And I thank Ricky and Sunil for this very obsolete headline. To have a strategy about unpredictability is, I think, very funny. So I made a list of recommendations how you can train intuition and your spontaneity. And this is it. First thing, you have to define a genetic code before you define a dress code. Talking about concept brands, talking about the mentality field, and not talking about the size of a logo, of a typeface, of a color. The Harvard Business Review, they found out that top executives only spend 3 hours per month on strategy issues. And I think this is exactly the problem. We don't talk much on this high-level execution level. We don't talk too much about strategy. We talk about I like it, I don't like it, or about strange logo sizes. So we have to define the genetic code first. Second, make more than one plan. Marketing literature tells us we have to have a vision, we have to have a strategy to get there, or how to get there, but they don't tell us if you only follow one strategy, it could as well lead into disaster. So maybe it would be a good thing to follow 2 or 3 strategies, at least on products. Third thing, control the controllers. I have nothing against bean counting and nothing about cost optimization, but when it comes to innovation, those are not the right people to drive a company forward. So I think also, I hope I speak in the name of the school, a creative leader in every creative company. This is about it. Keep an eye on disruptions. There's a very nice book written by Nicholas Taleb. It's called The Black Swan, and he basically tells us that during our educational system, we are drilled to see the details. This is why we can't see the big picture anymore. And this is a problem. For instance, something like Google could only be observed if you take the big picture and if you see the big disruptions or the disruptions outside of your mindset. So we have to keep an eye on that, sometimes taking a step back. And I just felt myself, when I came here to the school for 2 weeks in every 3 months, I really had also the possibility to step back and look at my company, how we are doing things. This was quite helpful. Fifth thing, to almost everybody I was talking, they said you have to get to know new people, you have to foster interactions. There's a very nice test in Tipping Point of Malcolm Gladwell, where he's talking about connectors, when you can test if you are a connector. Connector are people who have the power to distribute an idea, or maybe have the power to influence some people around them. They have usually a very big network. What you basically can do, you take the telephone book of the city you're living in, you randomly choose 250 names, and for every name you know somebody by this name, you give yourself 1 point. If you have more than 40 points, you can call yourself connector. Gut decisions start in the head. As a creative leader, you all the time you have to make it. You have to have a good intuition, and you have to improvise. But when it comes to improvisation, I think that improvisation is about giving up structures, and for this you have to have a good maturity. You have to have a good experience in your job, and you have to have enough knowledge. There's basically nothing you can do about it. If you're too young, if you don't have the experience, your intuition can be good, but maybe then it's a lucky punch. But the older you get, the more experience you have. I think there's a lot to be learned about intuition and doing the right things. Herald, squash and free jazz. These are like 3 topics you can train yourself, your spontaneity. Herald is an improvisation comedy technique. Sanil was taking classes, which is no surprise to me. I mean, he's a really good presenter, and I think you really could tell that he took some lessons there. You can learn it by Second City, which was developed by or established by Del Close. Del Close was a big, very influential on Bill Murray, and what I heard, his last words when he was lying on the bed were, "I'm tired to be the funniest person in the room." So Herald is obviously a very good method to train your spontaneity, to go on stage, somebody's throwing a topic at you and you have to act. Quick ball games like squash or basketball are really good. This really trains your brain in taking fast decisions, in taking a fast coordination of your body parts. And if you're into music, don't play notes, improvise. We know that free jazzers belong to the most intuitive people in society. Then I already told you, never take the same route to work. But also don't challenge yourself, maybe also challenge the people around you. There's a very nice, become a troublemaker. There's a very nice example of a German hockey trainer. In '93 he was training the junior squad of the German hockey team, and they usually what they did is before the final they watched they watched the video of the opponents, and all the time they knew, okay, they're gonna see this video for 2 hours, and then we go on the squad and then on the pitch, and then we win. And in the last game, in the final, he put in a fish called Wanda, and everybody was like, what's this? They were just watching the film, and on the same day they become world champions. So sometimes you have to surprise your environment, do something radically different. And Scandinavianize yourself, referring to the Gerd Hofstede's The Matrix of uncertainty avoidance. We know that Scandinavian people and people from the Anglo-Saxon countries are more risk-taking. Renzo Rosso from Diesel Jeans, he works in teams of three people from 3 different continents, and he always looks at least somebody from Scandinavia or somebody from the Anglo-Saxon countries in there, because they are more risk-taking. They're also relativists. They don't believe in hierarchy, so this maybe could cause some problem, but this is basically something which takes you off. So, and before you ask myself, if you ask me, what have you learned? I think I'm much more optimistic to the future, because people are afraid of the unpredictability of the future, but it is the predictability of our actions that should give us greater cause of concern. I think what we are doing, our actions are even more visible for an opponent or for a competitor than the things which are not done yet. New things do not appear in our world as abruptly as we might think. The shockwaves are there, we just have to recognize them. Thank you very much.